As more educational research is conducted, the importance of shifting the focus from teaching to learning becomes more evident. Simultaneously, advancements in science and medicine allow us to learn more about how the brain works. These new findings must be incorporated into changes occurring in classrooms across the country. Education can no longer be about how teachers teach, but instead must be about how students learn. Even empowered by endless research, changes in education arrive slowly. Many educators view reform and change as a requirement to completely restructure their practice. Because effective teaching and effective learning share many of the same characteristics, this overhaul mentality is not needed. Teachers and learners must be aware that all actions impact learning. They also must know that effectiveness is influenced by knowledge of what is being taught in the classroom, and that effective teaching and learning both require passage through the same stages of development: acclimation of knowledge, competence, which is like mastery, and expertise. These similarities between effective teaching and effective learning mean shifting the focus will only require planning and implementing lessons from a different perspective. Consider shifting the focus during a lesson on properties of exponents. Instead of presenting students with the algebraic rules, like on the left, and then having them practice problems using these rules, instead, present students with examples of the properties in action, like on the right, and then ask them to determine the rules. Both lessons would take the same amount of time to implement and require the same amount of planning, but the second lesson will have a bigger impact on students because they will discover the learning for themselves. These research-based changes are not the first in the history of education. Learning theories have progressed since education began in the form that we know it today. Initial educational research emphasized theories of behaviorism to help teach students through reinforcement and punishment. We now know that these theories were effective for reinforcing behaviors, but not necessarily for helping students to learn. Additional research introduced the ideas of social cognition and developmental stage theories. But most recently, research is indicating that learning occurs in a social context through the observation of others and through interacting with others. Classrooms can no longer be rows of students sitting silently copying notes from the board, but instead must be collaborative environments where students interact with one another and the teacher to learn through discovery and observation. For these classrooms to exist, teachers must focus on 6 areas of essential understanding to help students learn. These areas include having a strong content knowledge base, using strategic processing to plan lessons, understanding the importance of motivation and student affect in the classroom, planning for developmental and individual differences that exist within the classroom through use of differentiation, knowing how out-of-school situations are impacting students in the classroom, and using an array of assessments to determine student understanding. Focusing on assessments, making this one change can address multiple areas of understanding. When using diagnostic, formative, and summative assessments together, teachers are able to demonstrate their content knowledge, use strategic processing and data to plan their lessons, and to identify and address various needs within their classroom. The use of multiple forms of assessment can also help increase student motivation by allowing students to track their progress towards goals set by themselves and their teachers. In addition to these understandings, Beers outlines in his book the 4 main learning processes research says impact students' ability to gain new understanding. First is that social factors can trigger stress, and stress can reduce the memory capacity of our students. Secondly, teachers need to help students find ways to develop the motivation necessary to be successful. Third, it is important for students and teachers to reflect on their learning and to use those reflections to monitor progress towards mastery of a concept. And lastly, the cognitive process of learning requires building and integrating new information into the brain using what students have previously learned. Although all learning processes are important, the newest shift in educational research is the inclusion of brain research through neuroscience. This new research places an increased emphasis on the cognitive process. Increased research shows us that the understanding of the cognitive process is different than what we thought it was before. Perhaps the most powerful implication coming out of neuroscience is the need for learning to occur primarily in one of two ways. First, learning must build on what students already know. Connections between neurons access multiple points of knowledge, and so new learning has to be able to use one of these already established connections. If a connection doesn't exist, then a new connection must be made. For a new connection to be made, learning experiences must be concrete and hands-on, and they must create an emotional reaction that allows a new connection to be formed. Similar to the structure of this presentation, where everything is connected, neurons within the brain are all connected through synapses. A single connection, used to recall numerous pieces of information, is activated every time that piece of information is needed. In Dr. Wolf's video, she used the idea of a red ball and a red square and a red desk, all using the same synapse that accesses the information of red. Concrete experiences must occur to create a new connection strong enough to last. And then what we have to ensure is that students have time to practice those connections to strengthen them and make them long-lasting. It's only by shifting the focus from teaching to learning through the use of research that teachers can hope to increase student achievement.